Welcome back to After Dark Chat. This is Season 2, Episode 1, and we're focusing on normalizing HIV testing as a lifestyle thing. Of course, I feel like it is an issue that touches home. It touches all of us, but it really isn't talked about enough. And so we are here with some very dynamic and phenomenal guests who will be diving into this overall conversation to kind of talk more about what normalizing HIV testing looks like. And so I'm just gonna turn the attention right now to my wonderful guests. I'm starting with Joy. Joy, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good. I would just love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and the organization you are affixed to.
Okay. My name is Joy. I'm Joy Adebayo Yetoro. I'm the ACCHO strategy worker at Moyo Health and Community Services. And Moyo is the only ASO, AIDS service organization in the Peel region. So we serve Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Natasha, I've been saying how wonderful your style is.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for being here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and also the organization you are representing.
So my name is Natasha Lawrence, and I am from Women's Health and Women's Hands Community Health Center. We are located in downtown Toronto, 2 Carlton Street on the 5th floor, and our organization serves racialized women, trans and non-binary people from African, Caribbean, Black, South Asian, and Latin American communities.
All right, thank you so very much for that, Natasha. Derrick, I've had the privilege of working with you at CAYR, so I do know that you're coming from CAYR, but just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm Derrick. As you said, I work at CAYR Community Connections, located in Newmarket. Again, we are also the only ASO in that region, serving Richmond Hill, all the way to Georgina.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for being here, Derrick. And Veronica, thank you so very much for being here as well. Veronica, tell us a little bit more about yourself as well as an agency, if you do represent an agency.
So my name is Veronica Segbeji. I'm a nurse practitioner and I'm representing the PrEP Clinic. We have locations in Brampton, Ottawa, and downtown Toronto. So we provide PrEP care as well as HIV services.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for that. So as you already know, this is a well-equipped panel, and we have some knowledge experts here as well who will be diving into this wonderful conversation about normalizing HIV testing. And we're starting with Joy, because Joy is my favorite. And so, Joy, when we talk about normalizing HIV testing, what does that mean, and what do you think it looks like in our communities as well?
I think that when we talk about normalizing HIV testing, we should talk about making it a part of our day-to-day routine, like the way that we check for example, our blood pressure or our blood sugar, for example, or we go to the barber and we go, when we go for regular testing, we should also make sure that HIV testing is also a part of it. And I think that a lot of folks are scared, when you hear HIV, it's like, oh my God. But when you actually think about it, it's a tool of empowerment and not of fear. It's affirming, to know your status, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for that. You also spoke about fear, and I also thought about risk. Veronica, when you hear the word risk and how that is often tied to the to HIV overall and HIV testing, what does that really mean, and how can we change the narrative to something more powerful, something more positive as well, when we talk about risk and how that is also associated with HIV testing?
Sure. So I think oftentimes when we talk about HIV testing, we consider individuals who are considered high risk, right? But oftentimes it's not necessarily about their risk versus their ability to access services. So I think, again, it's changing how we frame the narrative, and so not calling it high risk versus an underserved population or a group that actually has limited access to services.
Okay, I love that response. I think also about the different organizations and the good work that they're doing, right? But then there are so many other things that I think can be done. But Derrick, I'd love for you to talk about what CAYR is doing in terms of its response to HIV testing or just reaching the ACB community overall. Are there cultural events that CAYR does in an effort really to connect with the ACB community and also to promote the idea of normal testing, HIV testing?
Oh yeah, we provide the community with information about the self-testing kit, how to access it and use it. And since there are new procedures on acquiring a kit, so we support folks, through the website, the Get a Kit, and I'm Ready, and we use our office as a pickup location for them. So there could be challenges like clients that cannot access internet. So we support that. They can come to your office and then they use our computers. We have a computer in place designated to support clients to, request for HIV self-testing kit, and that is, they have their privacy. We don't even see what they write into the website. So they just drop it off, and then we can even, like, once the kit is delivered, we either call them up or deliver it to them. And it's a civic community members. Some like prefer it not to be known, like they don't want to. Some don't want us to know that they are requesting for a kit or something of that sort. So building that trust, within the agency, they can come and talk to you about the kit, and it's safe and private, and they learn. We also offer pre-test counseling. Yeah, talking to them, what if a test is reactive, what are they going to do? And even if it is for confirmatory tests, we support them. If it is non-reactive, what are procedures? How can they live safe sex education? We provide condoms and lubes and all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so very much for that. You spoke about pre-counseling, and that leads me to my question, Natasha, about testing overall and the individual as the unit who may be afraid of getting tested for HIV. What does that look like in response to a person's fear of testing for HIV? I know that they have pre and post counseling, but are there other initiatives that can help an individual to kind of ease that fear of getting tested for HIV?
Yeah, I think being really being well resourced, I think, is really important. So knowing what resources are out there and are available for folks. So whether that be resources that organizations develop, that could be like different campaigns or different like promotional materials, or even for example, like Women's Health did a documentary back in the 2000s, but I still think it's a quite powerful piece of work where it is, following the lives of three to four women who are living with HIV. And I think it helps to normalize, right, the experience of recognizing that these are people living their everyday lives, right, and sharing their experiences and whatnot. So I think like when there's opportunities for things to normalize the conversation around HIV, so whether that be maybe through workshops that happen, right? Like sometimes we'll have conversation cafe style workshops where they're a bit more informal, or we'll have wellness events where there'll be various different activities that are going on, but HIV is just one part of that activity. So I think just being really creative about how we talk about it and being really well resourced in terms of knowing what's out there and what's available for folks can be a step to address some of the fear that some folks may have around HIV.
I really appreciate that take.
I just wanted to expand on what Natasha said. So as a provider, oftentimes people walk into your clinic room with all these myths about HIV testing, right? And so our role essentially is to demystify some of these, you know, understanding that they might have. And I think earlier or previously, there was a lot of fear mongering with regards to HIV, what it meant if you tested positive or when you tested positive. And so again, letting people understand what HIV is now and what the implications of testing positive looks like, right? Because people aren't dying from HIV anymore, right? People are able to live normal lives, and so just because the result doesn't go in the direction that you want doesn't mean life is over. And just having you explain that to people, it really changes how they feel towards testing in the end when they know that they've got the supports, the resources, and the fact that a positive doesn't always mean that that's the end of everything.
Yeah.
That is so true. And there are so many reasons why a person may not want to get tested for HIV. But when we talk about our AIDS service organizations, do you think they're doing enough, Joy, to promote HIV testing services in spaces where our people actually are?
Yeah, I think to an extent, we are doing what we can. I think we can definitely do more. Like we do outreaches. For example, Veronica works at the PrEP clinic that is situated out of Moyo. There are a lot of like AIDS service organizations that are all over like the province, for example. And we all do. I like to think that we all do good work. Are there like stuff that we can still do? Definitely. Like if it's like to reach out to partner with, how do I put it? To partner with like maybe churches, for example, like in conservative areas where like people are a bit religious, for example, like we need to, for example, I think ACCHO had like a campaign sometime, I don't know if It Takes Courage or something.
Yeah.
Yes, that like went to churches, went to mosques and all of that. I think that like when people see it as an everyday thing, like it makes our work easier. Like yeah, but I still think that yeah, ASOs are doing like AIDS service organizations are doing like the work to get the word out there.
Oh, there. I really appreciate that take. When we also talk about normalizing HIV testing, we talk about access as well, because we can't talk about normalizing it if there is limited access. So especially when it comes to the self-testing kits, I know that there are some limitations around that, Derrick. But what does that look like in terms of accessibility to self-testing kits? Are there initiatives in place at CAYR that kind of make it much easier for folks to access self-testing kits?
Oh yeah, as I said earlier, we support folks with, accessing it. Of course, before the new procedure of acquiring a test came in, we would, deliver them to folks. But now, as you know, they have to request for it themselves, I think for the cause of data. But right now, we try to, create a safe space for clients to acquire a kit, without triggering stigma and, any barriers that can come along with that. So we could support a client with applying for a kit, delivering it, and then again offering that pre-testing counseling to them. And then, as Veronica said, it's not a death sentence if the test is reactive. So it's part of us, and testing is, for everybody, it's part of life. The way Joy said, how you test your blood pressure, so we try to make it a routine, to deal with that fear and then the stigma that come along with, HIV conversations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that take. Yeah.
I was going to say that like sometimes when it comes to testing, even though like ASOs are doing their parts, I still think that like the Canadian government needs to do more when it comes to, I feel like there's been a shift sometimes from like HIV to like STBBIs. Like HIV is not seen as that endemic anymore. It's no longer seen as like, oh, now we are getting closer to 2030. We have reached our goals and like 95, 95, 95. We say all these terms and all these things. But really, like African, Caribbean and Black people are severely impacted. Like we are a priority population for a reason by HIV. And I think that like now that there's there's reduced access to like HIV testing, it might also mean that like higher numbers, and I think that the government needs to do better when it comes to that. It also like when it comes to for example, like even the technological access. Not some people don't have phones. Even when it comes to like harm reduction, like when you talk of like overdoses and like people who need to get tested and things like that. It still boils down to like HIV testing, like because people share needles, and like this is the practice that we see in like the work that we do. So I think that like yeah, there needs to be more access, like low barrier testing, no barrier access to testing. Like there needs to be more. The government needs to not just end these programs, but like I know that like the initiatives like I'm Ready, like and they are doing their best, like get the kits and all of that. But the government, it needs to be free. It needs to be low barrier as it has been.
Right. Yes. I love that. And you spoke about reduced access to testing. I wonder if you speak from a general perspective, or is it just specifically to the self-testing kit?
I think, for example, I think it's for the self-testing kits, and I think because like self-test kits are like people want the privacy and the confidentiality to know that like they can test in their own privacy, like nobody has to know what their results are. Because when it comes, there's a lot of myth and like stigma around, oh, I go to test in the hospital and then the government is going to have my data and all that. So there's ACB, like African, Caribbean, and Black folks, like when it comes to those things, like we are a bit like wary of like when it comes to data management, because like it's not given to us. We don't know what they do. Like for us, like we don't know what they do with this information. So we sort of like are scared when you tell people that, oh, you have to download an app to get self-test kits. They're like, what information are they asking for? Like people like drawback from from trying to use apps or like their data and all of that. So I think that like it needs to go back to like being low barrier, like where you can just pick up kits from centers like Moyo and other like health service organizations like Women's Health in Women's Hands. And yeah, although we try to assure people that, oh, like your information is safe, it's just like to report to our funders, but like the fear is still there, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard you speak earlier about testing overall and the fear of testing. And I find that some people may be afraid of testing because they are afraid of what the results could be. But what does that look like? For example, a person, we spoke about it earlier, of course, about a person being fearful of testing. But are there steps, for example, if a person's result returns as non-reactive negative or reactive positive, what does that look like? Is there access to or linkage to care beyond that point, or what does that look like, Natasha?
Yeah, so like within the pre-test and post-test counseling, depending on whatever the results are, we provide access to service and linkage to care. So if someone were to test negative or non-reactive, then they would be access to prevention services that are catered to their needs. So whether that be having a conversation about PrEP, or maybe for some folks it's or about like testing frequency, right? Like how frequently should they be testing, or questions around like other STIs, just having that conversation, because it's an opportunity for folks to get like tailored information to their needs and what they require. And if someone were to test reactive, then we have things in place, right, to get them to the care that they need. So, having conversations around disclosure. I was going to actually mention that, right? Because that is also another barrier to testing, right? Is the criminalization of HIV, right? So whenever we do post-test counseling and someone tests reactive, we do have conversations around disclosure, but they're very meaningful and mindful and very supportive conversations around disclosure, because it's not okay to criminalize something and then not provide any type of support in terms of how are folks able to disclose, right? How are folks able to actually have those conversations? And when is it necessary to have those conversations and when is it not necessary to have those conversations? Those things are things that need to be focused on and discussed. And then we have, health navigators that we work with at our center, case management that we work with at our center. So, once someone tests reactive, then we have that counseling session with them first, and then we, ensure to get them connected to the care that they need moving forward. So, linkage to care, no matter what the outcome is really important.
Sorry for the interruption, but guess what? We have a wonderful song here that we want you to hear. It's Take Care of We, Get Tested by Daria Devon. Now this song is championing change. It's also a call to action. So I hope that you can tune into the video.
Look out for one another. Use your voice, stand up tall, one for all. Get tested. Take care of your health, not only for yourself. You gotta take care of it. Step by step all together. Caring for one another. Use your voice, shout it out, scream and shout. Know your status. Gotta take care of it.
This song is dropping very soon and we want you to tune in because again, this song is championing change. It's a call for action and it's also one that speaks about community. Now let's get back to the conversation. I want to still focus on linkage to care, a non-reactive response, result rather from HIV testing and what that looks like in your capacity as a nurse practitioner. I know that you work at the PrEP clinic as well. I want to kind of focus on that, but before I go there, we recently did a training with ACCHO on non-disclosure, HIV non-disclosure in the law. And so I feel like they have a really good resource manual where that is concerned. So I'm happy that you made mention of that as well. But what does that really look like? So I step into the PrEP clinic. One, I remember we had a conversation and you were saying that testing overall is very low barrier as well as accessing PrEP is very low barrier. What does that look like, one? And two, I step into your clinic and I get tested for HIV. My result is non-reactive or negative. Do I automatically have that conversation with you about PrEP and what does that look like?
So that we actually have that conversation before we even, as part of our STI conversation. So when an individual comes in, we're having a conversation about their context, right? So what are the things that are happening in your life that might increase your, your susceptibility to HIV? And so based on the conversation that we have, then PrEP, talking about PrEP will be the natural step before we even do the testing. So oftentimes, before the results come back, we've had that conversation, and oftentimes I actually do the PrEP blood work in anticipation based on the communication that we've had, the education I've provided to the client, and their own assessment of, I'm going to use the word risk here, to decide whether or not they want to go on PrEP. And that, again, that decision is very, very flexible, right? So there's no commitment in that conversation. It's just something to think about. Yeah. And then if you decide, great. If you decide not to, our doors are always, always open. And we always emphasize the fact that you can always come back to do STI testing. So you don't have to be part of our program to have access to STI testing. It's always available to individuals.
Oh, nice. I'm an immigrant. I have just flown into Canada. It's my first time on the Canadian soil, and I don't really have a status here. What does that look like for me in terms of accessing, care at your clinic?
So at PrEP Clinic, I can say we work very hard to address those barriers. So access means a lot of different things for us. So access, aside from geographical location, also includes even language. Immigration status doesn't matter. So we provide STI testing, PrEP care to everyone. And we also help individuals navigate in terms of like the resources that are available to them based on their status, right? Additionally, we have we have social work that's in our clinic, and so if an individual needs more support beyond the nurse practitioner client relationship, we're able to arrange that for them virtually. We provide access to individuals across the province, so you don't have to be in the Greater Toronto area to use our services. We offer virtual services for both PrEP and STI care, and so we're working really hard in ensuring that people have access to HIV care as well as PrEP care.
Awesome.
And PEP care as well. So that's another thing that we're doing right now, where individuals are able to access our services for post-exposure prophylaxis in the context of HIV and other STIs.
I love that. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit about the self-testing kits. We spoke about them earlier, but when I think about the self-testing kits, I've been in situations before where I got the kit, I didn't really want to read the instructions to do the test on my own. Do you think, are we confident enough that people are confident in using the self-testing kits, Derrick?
Yeah, so when I give out a self-testing kit, I assume a client does not know how to use it. I mean, like, you can never even assume, and you do not know when they're gonna use it. Are they gonna, think about it? Probably can't use these substances, at all. So we pack a kit with instructions, has instructions, but still, before I hand it out, I have, a demo. I have, a pamphlet that has information on how to use it. And I further tell the client, you can give me a call in particular hours if you have any questions. And if you don't get the results that you expect, I would request you call me back, and then we arrange for a confirmatory test. So you can never be sure that a client knows. They may tell you, they know, maybe they don't want to talk more about it, or they feel like you're encroaching on their privacy when you ask. So it's like, I'm not gonna assume they know, I'm gonna offer that kind of piece of information.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Can I add to that? Yeah. So I think using like the pamphlet and stuff like that is quite helpful, because it does show like the processes and whatnot. And definitely having that conversation with them beforehand is helpful as well too. I think like with the self-test kit that's currently out, it's pretty clear, I would say. Like we were a part of the study that was looking at the usability of the test, and to see if the general population would take to be like the efficacy rate of using the test, right? And we were focusing on ensuring that there was proper ACB representation in that study, and many of the folks who participated in it did really well with being able to do the test. But I do agree, especially in terms of like letting folks know things about like the temperature of the kits, like to ensure that they're not kept over like 30 plus degrees, or if you've been outside and it's the winter and you've been outside and it's really cold, to make sure when you get inside just to wait for the kit to come back to room temperature, to remind them to always check the expiry date, like things like that I think are important. Another piece that we did as well too is we created a sticker with with a phone number on it, where if anyone has any issues with their results, just please call us if you need any support. And then there's also like letting folks know about like the I'm Ready platform that has peer navigators on it that they can access as well too. So yeah, again, I think it goes back to like just giving people the resources that they need to be able to like do what they need to do and to feel confident in what they're doing.
Right. I love that. So when we talk about public health and the fear that individuals have in their information being reported to the same, what does nominal as well as anonymous testing look like?
Yeah, so Women's Health and Women's Hands is an official anonymous HIV point-of-care testing site. So we offer that service to folks. We offer it at our clinic, and we also offer it in community settings. So you'll see us at like Afrofest and Pride, like testing folks like out in community, right? And I honestly think that it has been quite helpful for us to have that to have access to the anonymous testing, because of the same points that Joy brought up around folks just being wary about how their information is being used, what's being reported back to public health, things like that. I think anonymous testing gives people a sense of agency and autonomy around how they do their testing, and I think that the more options we have for testing, the better, right? Allowing people to have those options. So for folks who are comfortable with nominal testing, that's great, right? They can access that in a variety of different spaces. For folks who want access to the anonymous point of care testing, making it more open and more aware that that's an option that's available to them. Also the self-testing, that's an option that's available to them. So with the anonymous testing, it's their results are attached to a number, right? That's what goes back to public health. If anything gets reported back to public health, it's getting reported back on a number. It's not their own information. It doesn't require their ID. It doesn't require them to have any documentation or anything like that. It doesn't require a health card, right? So those are the ways in which I think anonymous testing operates within like a low barrier stance. So having that as an option, I think, is really important, especially for our community.
There are so many barriers when it comes to accessing testing overall, but when we talk about the self-testing kits, what are some of the barriers that folks have? I mean, overall, you spoke about the reduced access to the same, but what are some other barriers and how can we effectively address those barriers?
I think that you can't talk about access to self-test kits or testing in general without acknowledging the systemic inequalities that folks face. For example, like a point I made earlier, like if you have $35, you're not thinking, oh, I want to buy HIV test kits for $35, which is how much it goes for. You are thinking, oh, I can use this money to load my Presto and go on like so many trips to work, or I can use it to eat, I can use it to buy groceries. You're not thinking about, oh, I need to get tested. For example, HIV, people, newcomers, for example, you're thinking about like your immigration status, you're thinking about the process. You're not thinking, oh, I need to get tested. And it's a known fact, like in our line of practice, that during this period, some folks become people living with HIV during this period because they are not paying so much attention. There's also the technological aspect of it. Some people don't have access to phones, or even they are not so technology friendly. They don't know how to use technology that much. Maybe they are older folks, or they are not just familiar with it because we come from different places. Right. So I think that we need to acknowledge all of this. Things like housing, racial discrimination, like lack of jobs, unemployment, and all these issues that affect us. So I think that these are the nuances, the contextual conversations that we need to have. When you're talking about even mental health, you need to consider the overall well-being of a person before and then related to sexual health. For a lot of people is low on the list of the things that they need to get sorted out. So when we are talking about normalizing testing, we have to make sure that the whole overall well-being of a person is also taken care of. And then now we can talk about sexual health, and then it should be normalized. It should be a part of their everyday lifestyle or their everyday life.
I was just going to add to what Joy just said. So I think, as a provider, I think there needs to be an attitudinal shift within the provider community also, because I think oftentimes, and this is speaking with clients, oftentimes providers aren't comfortable with having that conversation with clients. And unfortunately, they're the main people that clients go to, right? So they're either in the context of a primary care provider or walk-in clinic. And a lot of these providers are uncomfortable having the conversation or even recommending testing, or know where the resources are within the community. So we're very lucky that we have connections in the community where we have family physicians referring their clients to us because they know they just don't have enough knowledge to start clients on PrEP or manage HIV, for example, if they were to be diagnosed. So I think it's really important to kind of target primary care providers as well in terms of addressing those barriers to make sure that they have the knowledge, the skill, the judgment to even like recommend, you know, a service to someone who needs additional supports that they might not necessarily be able to provide.
I love that take. I love that take. I love also the point you made about meeting people where they are when it comes to access to care overall. Derrick, it came to my mind just now, when it comes to testing overall, do you think mainstream media is doing enough to really help normalize HIV testing?
Well, that's a no, because conversations around HIV are not like openly talked about, like held. They don't hold open conversations about HIV and HIV testing. So, for example, look at World AIDS Day. You know, there are media houses that don't talk about it, or they just post about it, or you know, it's like any other day. I've made clients or organizations that don't want to associate themselves with any conversations around HIV. So there is a barrier that really needs attention. Yeah, so the answer is no, it's not.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you said that, because I also think about stigma, Natasha, and I find that the silence surrounding HIV testing and, you know, prevention and care overall, whereas HIV is concerned, I find that stigma is somewhat perpetuated by that whole narrative, and also by the fact that I think the stigma is also internalized.
Yeah.
How can we really address that issue and kind of help to reduce stigma? Because the truth is, do we think that we are also able to eradicate stigma altogether?
That's a big one.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, I think we can continue to like work towards addressing stigma. But I think ending it completely, that might take a little bit more time. When I think about, I see stigma as almost a byproduct of like trauma, you know? And when I think about how we heal trauma, how it gets healed generationally, that usually takes quite a long time, right? So I kind of view stigma in the same way. But that doesn't mean that we don't continue to address it in the present day and continue to work towards that. So for me, I think sex positivity is a really big thing for me in terms of addressing stigma. I think that if folks are, you know, are able to find spaces where they're able to talk about sex, their sexuality, the type of sex that they're into in a very like non-judgmental way, is a big step in kind of reducing that barrier around being able to even get to the conversation around testing. If folks don't feel comfortable being able to even express that part of themselves or feel like they're going to be judged because of it, you know, especially because there's certain aspects of the ACB community where we are heavily faith-based. We are like, there's certain things that may impact that a bit, right? And then looking at it intersectionally, depending on the identity that you hold, right? And the history of stigma and discrimination when it comes to HIV, the association of HIV among Black people, the association of HIV among our gay bi MSM folks, right? Like there is that history of stigma that still exists, and we have done a great job in terms of the education. To really educate folks about the realities of HIV and all of the advancements that we've made to this day. But because that stigma is so pervasive, there are still folks who will not want to access services at Women's Health, even though HIV is one component of the services that we offer. We offer primary care and a variety of different services. But because that connection is there, they will still be a little weary about even wanting to access services or go into ASOs or things like that, right? So we have to also really keep that in mind and be really creative about how we put those services out there. Yeah, so there has been there has been some like really good movement in terms of having these wellness events where HIV is the secondary issue, not the primary issue, right? So folks are coming to the event knowing that they're going to access to yoga or access to massage therapy or access to some other type of health and wellness service. But within that, we incorporate the conversation around HIV. We offer the anonymous point of care testing. We offer the HIV self-testing kits. So you know, those are kinds of ways that we can help to address that. I think also storytelling too. There are amazing folks who are living with HIV who are open about telling their stories. And I know that that has been a very powerful thing for me, being able to just see the stories being told. Anyone who is interested, if you visit Women's Health YouTube page, there's some really great storytelling that happens on that page. So yeah, so I think that you know, it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's going to definitely take us time, but we're continuing to address stigma because it's one of the biggest barriers when it comes to HIV testing.
Thank you so very much for joining us on part 1 of this wonderful conversation about normalizing HIV testing as a lifestyle thing. Now, you are going to want to be a part of the conversation when we drop part 2. So, I'm asking you to comment, like, share, and also subscribe so that when we do drop that part, you are there.